going to cover the top 3 reasons you're stuck in whatever area of life that you find yourself stuck in. So if you're thinking, man, I can never ever get healthy or lose the weight that I always wanted to lose, then you want to listen to today's show. You want to take notes. If you're thinking, man, why am I still single? I've been praying for a partner for 10 years, or maybe less, maybe more. Why am I stuck? Then you definitely want to listen. If your bank account has been looking the same, and who knows, that could be, the same amount of money, or it could be no money, whatever that might be. But you notice that your bank account is stuck, then this is the show for you. You want to listen, because I'm going to cover the top 3 reasons people get stuck. And let me tell you where I'm coming from with this. So you guys know that I've been coaching people for a little under a decade. And one of the things that I've started to do is I'm going back through a lot of the notes I've taken for myself. And I'm compiling what I saw, right? What I wrote in terms of the experience I had coaching these clients, and what I noticed in terms of their, what had them stuck, and actually what allowed them to move forward in their lives. Part of the reason this came up for me is I'm always observing things around me. And I was at a friend's house recently, and this friend of mine had this brand new state-of-the-art home theater system. I mean, and they were showing it to me. They're like, man, you got to check this out. Listen to how good it sounds. And I noticed that every time they wanted to adjust the volume or adjust something with the home theater system, they would get up off the couch, they would run over to the console, and they would make all the changes, turn it up, turn it down, change the bass, increase the treble, whatever it is they wanted to do with this home theater system, they kept getting up. And so I said, hey, man, with a system like this, you can control the entire system on your phone. And they were like, really? I didn't know that. And so then the next question I asked is, well, did you read the manual? Did you read the user manual for this brand new, sophisticated technology that you bought? Now, what do you think the answer was? Answer was, no, I didn't read the manual. And I started laughing. And I said, well, look, man, got something similar at home. Let me take care of you. I grabbed his phone, went to the home theater system, synced everything up. And next thing you know, boom, boom, it was running, right? And I'm not even a tech guy. But one of the things I do is I do read user manuals, all right? Now, what's my point here? My point is, how many of us have the way or a system or a manual that will provide us clarity in terms of where we want to go in life, and we fail to use it? I think about this show, and I'm on every Sunday morning, and people know it. But I'm going to tell you something, because this is a show that can change your life, and I know it because I've heard it from people. Because it's a show that can change your life, there's going to be resistance to listening consistently, because it could serve in some ways as a user manual, depending on what it is that you want to do. But it got me to wondering, how often do we make large investments but miss the benefits of those investments because we don't have guidance? We don't have guidance. I tease my wife all the time because she has one of, her car is much more modern than mine and newer than mine, more beautiful than mine. But she doesn't like the technology in it. Sometimes when I'm driving, she'd be like, the car can do that? Like, absolutely, it can do that. But many times we make large investments in things and we don't even know how to fully utilize the entirety of the investment, the entirety of the blessing. I want you to take this to your personal life. Many times we're blessed with something and we only take advantage of 2% of the blessing, 5% of the blessing, 10% of the blessing, because we haven't done the work. And to tell you, and it's not even hard work, right? We haven't done the work to better understand how we can fully utilize what we've been blessed with. And this morning, before we get into the top 3 reasons we stay stuck, I really want you to begin thinking about this. Like, what blessing in your life have you received? I think about marriage. Man, I was sharing this not too long ago with some friends. My wife and I, we're going on 4 years next month. And the first 2 years, they always say the first 2 years are tough. And I think when we went into marriage, we were like, nah, man, the first 2 years aren't going to be tough. We're going to make this happen. We different. And guess what? The first 2 years were tough. And what pulled us out of it were resources, right? Things that help you get unstuck. Relationship coaching, books. I mean, you name it. But there are manuals that help us navigate where we are and what we're doing in life. How much time, comfort, and money have you wasted simply because you've refused to educate yourself about the current options that you have? It's funny. I was rereading the book Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. And the book is about money, obviously, and money investments and things like this. And this is my second time reading the book. I was just kind of going through it because I'm just thinking about my family and where we are financially and some of the goals that I have. And one of the things that Tony Robbins says in the book is how 401ks are structured and how so many people are using this vehicle for investment and they don't understand it. And here it is. I mean, people have their I want you to think about this in terms of the context of what I'm about to share. Their entire life savings, right? How they plan to live out retirement. When you think about retirement for all of us, most of us will be retired. I mean, if we have good health, almost as long as we've been working, right? I mean, 65, if you retire at 60 or 65 years old, and you could easily live to 80, 85. That's 20 years of your life. And so you're working right now. You're putting money away. You're saving money, or I hope you are. Although we know, I mean, I've shared this before, that I think it's about 50% of Americans aren't doing anything regarding retirement. They're just living in the now. And if that's you, you want to keep listening. Why are you stuck? But 50% of us, we're putting money away into some type of vehicle. Most of you all are doing it in 401ks, and you have no clue what the impediment of a 401k is. And right now, some people's hearts are dropping. What is the impediment? Let's talk about that. What I'll tell you is the major impediment are the fees you're paying. That's the major impediment, and it's eroding the growth of your fund. But most people don't know that. Why don't they know that? Because that's a vehicle that has user manuals that most of us don't read. So when they come to the house, what do? You toss them. And I'm not about to read all that small writing. Well, you should. Or at least find something else, 401ks for dummies. But the point is, most of us, we do not use user manuals. And I believe this happens to us more than we like to admit. All of us, more than we like to admit. And so I'm going to ask you a question as we get into this morning's topic. When was the last time you listened, because we had audiobooks now, or you've read some type of support or manual around a large purchase or investment that you've made? Like, when is the last time you actually opened it up and you read the manual? And if the answer is yes, Linal, I do that most of the time, phenomenal. Then the next question is, are you doing that with your life, with your development? And if the answer is no, I want to challenge you this morning that one of the reasons, this is not even the top 3 reasons, but one of the reasons you might be stuck is because you're just not curious enough. You're not curious enough about what you might be missing out on. You're not curious enough about what it's really like to live the best life. And one of the most important investments you can make is always, 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 always in yourself. And so the biggest question is, do you have a user's manual for your life? Do you have guiding principles that you are using for your life? And if you say, oh yeah, Linal, I have the Bible, then I'm going to ask you, how much are you reading it? And have you read it? Because most folks, think about this, right? You buy, or it could be the Quran if you're Muslim, right? Any religious text. But most folks, when you talk about reading something, right? I mean, we're talking about reading something in its entirety so you understand the context. And most folks, they ain't read the whole Quran. They ain't read the whole Bible. They've read a scripture or two. And contextually, they think they might know what's going on. And the biggest problem we have today is most of you all are trusting someone else to tell you. And, you can do that if you want to. But I know for me, I'm not trusting somebody else with the direction of my life. I kind of want to have, some thoughts as to what you're saying, whether it's right or wrong, or it lines up with what I've read in the manual. So my point in sharing this to open up is we want to educate ourselves always. And if you wonder why you're struggling at this thing called life, then consider that you may be struggling because the answers you seek are right in front of you, but you're not taking the time. You're not taking the time to adequately dive in and really, really understand and learn what it is that you should be doing. John Wolfgang von Goethe. I think I said that right. Goethe, yeah. So Johann Wolfgang von Goethe said, behavior is the mirror in which everyone shows their image. What is your behavior when it comes to your self-development? And by the way, I want you to keep listening, because if you think you understand what self-development is, I'm going to share something around self-development that I believe is going to blow a lot of people's minds. Because most of us don't know. Most of us don't even understand what self-development is. We have no clue. You got to stay tuned. But what's your behavior telling you about your self-development and your education in terms of how you pay attention to manuals in your life right in front of you? And that in itself will give you some ideas of why you may be stuck. Let's go into the first reason. The first reason most of us are stuck is because we believe, or we've allowed ourselves to fall into the story that I do not have control. I do not have any type of control. I don't have control. That's reason number one. All right. And let me tell you something. In the African American community, when I talk to people, this is something that comes up more than you know. I don't have control. The reason why this is happening in my life is because of matters that I cannot control. If I could control it, it wouldn't be happening. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about control as a context, which means I gotta educate you a little bit. This is something I teach my clients. All right. Context is something like a cognitive distortion. All right. Psychologists, They basically say that there are 15 cognitive distortions that all human beings moving around the earth have one of these 15 or more of these cognitive distortions, okay? And a cognitive distortion is nothing but being in a situation where what I see and how I think about what I see is distorted. Okay? Now, let me say it one more time. What I see around me in my life and how I think about what I see is distorted. And so when it comes to the level of control we have in our lives, most of us have a distorted point of view around that level of control. Let me give you some examples. Especially as control as a context, right? Control as a context. And let me finish on context, 'cause I think this is really important, all right? Now, in terms of context, one of the ways to think about context is like a box. All right, I'm looking around and trying to see if I have a box. I don't have a box. But, think of a box. And that if we put control in a box, in order for us to navigate our life, if I think about things in terms of being in control or being out of control, that's all in the box. Anything that has to do with control would be in the box, right? Because the box is the context of control. I hope this is making sense. So control is in the box. Now, if I believe that I have full control of my life, or I try to control everything in my life, you guys know people like this, right? Control freaks, that's what we call them. They're always trying to control everything around them because that is how they feel they can gain power. All right. This is how they feel they can be powerful in their lives. And so they're always looking to control. Notice what they're controlling: other things and other people. Right. The significance of control is not on themselves. They're more worried about controlling the other people. Controlling what my spouse is doing, controlling what my girlfriend is doing, controlling what they're doing at the job, controlling outside of myself. Now, this should click something, right? Because people who have a control context, the major part of what they're always looking to control, and this is weird, but what they're always looking to control is somebody else or something else. Which, by the way, typically, if you think about it, cannot be controlled. So I want you to think about this because, again, I said reason number one that people stay stuck is because they feel like they do not have control. I don't have control. I can't control the narrative that the United States has a black man. So my focus is on all these things that I can't control. And by the way, if I'm in that context, it's likely that in the same breath that I believe I can't control my circumstance or the things around me, I'm also because I believe that, I'm working very hard to control other people and things around me. Now, why is this significant? The reason this is significant is because so much effort is given to controlling other people and being a victim of the things that I can't control that I completely forget about the one area of influence that I have in my life that I can't control. And that's me. That's me. And let me tell you something. It's slippery. But one of the major reasons why many people are stuck to this day are because they believe they do not have control. And in this belief that they do not have control, that context, this is how it operates. I'm telling you, I've worked with hundreds of people. This is how it operates. That context of a lack of control has them hyper-focused on controlling things and people that they cannot control. And because they're so focused on controlling other people, other things, what happens is they forget about the one person that they can control, and that's themselves. And so as a result, they stay stuck. They stay stuck. Now, I'm not done with this reason. Here's the other thing about control. Control, and by the way, all of you at some point feel like you have this level of control in your life. Control also is an illusion. Here's what I mean that it's an illusion, okay? Part of the illusion that many of us have when it comes to control is the illusion of safety. I've talked about this before, all right? I can control my safety. I can control the safety of those around me. And you might say, well, Linal, no, I understand. Do you really? Do you really? Many of us, the reason why we lock our doors at night, right? Click, click. The reason why we turn on the alarms boop, 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 is because we have this illusion that by doing that, right, the cognitive distortion in our brain says you are now completely 100% safe. And that does something to our brain. And by the way, this is a good thing. You wouldn't be able to rest otherwise, right? And then something in our brain says, right? And now I feel like I'm in my safe space. And this illusion of safety really comes from a need to control my immediate environment. It's in the context of control. Now, for those of us who can't do that, that means that there's something we can't shut off, right? That's another cognitive distortion. I'm not going to talk about that. But for those of us that can, what's important is that we understand that we're manifesting in some way what we can control. What we can control, and it's an illusion. Because anybody out here, knows how, anybody out here, I've seen it before. I've seen guys break through a deadbolt in a matter of seconds. I've seen them do it. Pop, pop with a crowbar, boom. It ain't that loud either. But I've seen them do it. But the illusion of safety around that, by the way, we've been told that's what gives us our safety, is what makes us say, I'm safe. Now, what's my point here? My point is, in order for us to gain full control of ourselves, right? Remember, the reason is I don't have control. The reason I'm stuck is I don't have control, Linal. We want to begin to operate outside this box, especially if you're a person who, you notice I do try to control people. That's me. And one of the things we're going to talk about quite a bit in the next hour is self-awareness, because somebody who does try to control people doesn't necessarily know that they try to control people. And so for them, that's not even something that is not even on their radar. We'll talk about self-awareness quite a bit. However, if you want to navigate outside the box, like you notice that, you're talking about me. So what's the solution? Here's the solution. The first thing is you have to be aware. All right. You have to be willing to call yourself out. So if you're a person who you feel like, hey, I don't have control of my life, but you've been trying to exert that control in other places, just right now, tell yourself, that's me. That's me. I don't have control, and I feel like I don't have control. And because I don't feel like I have control, I'm guilty as charged, Linal. I've been trying to exert control in places that I shouldn't, try to exert control. And I really should be more focused on me. And then what I want you to do is I want you to choose something outside the context of control that you're going to focus on. Because this is how we escape it, right? This is a box for many. It's a cage for many of us. And the only way to escape it is to choose something outside the box. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. What you could do is choose love. Love operates outside of control. I love my wife. And because I love my wife, then if I'm looking through the lens of love, then I'm asking myself not only what's in it for me, but what's in it for her. And then from that context, I'm not trying to control her and pull the strings emotionally. By the way, control isn't all about, being stronger than somebody, bigger than somebody. Manipulation, emotional manipulation are forms of control. And so I'm not trying to control her emotionally. I'm not trying to control her in some of these other ways. All I'm doing is loving on her and thinking about what it is that she needs and how it may support her. All right. So love is a great way to operate outside this context. Now, here's the other reason why I chose love. Because love has this way of permeating almost anything. I mean, just has this ability of seeping into almost anything. And if there's a lack of love, then yeah, control can definitely be part of the consequence. Here's the other area. If you struggle with I don't have control, Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, one of the things that he talked about the circle of influence. And the circle of influence is simply two circles, and inside the circles inside of each other, and the circle in the middle is basically the things that you can influence in your life, right? There are things that you can influence in your life. And outside that circle are the things that you cannot influence. When we think about I don't have control, if that's one of the reasons that you're stuck, then the practice for you, a way for you to begin navigating outside of that cognitive distortion or that way of thinking, is to really, really begin to get clear on what can I influence. Make a list. What are the things that I can influence in my life? What are the things that I can influence at my company? What are the things that I can influence in my business for those of us who are entrepreneurs? Because there's some entrepreneurs who feel like they're completely out of control. This business has morphed into something and it has completely taken over my life. I am completely a slave to the company that I built. Some people feel that way. I don't have control. That's why you're stuck in your business. That's why you're stuck as an entrepreneur. And what you have to do is begin gaining clarity on the areas that you can immediately influence in that business as the leader, as the boss, as the entrepreneur. All right. Now, I don't have control. A couple other places for us to look before we go to number 2. One is attitude. See, here's the thing. And that's why I covered the context of control first, and the fact that many people who feel like they don't have control are constantly trying to control the things outside of them, constantly trying to control other people and other things. Because when I realize that, wait a second, even though I may not have control of who the mayor of Chicago is, even though I don't have control of how police treat the black community, even though I don't have control of these things, then one of the things that I do have control over is my attitude. And I get to choose whether or not I'm going to have an empowered attitude. I get to choose whether or not I'm going to have an inspired perspective. I get to choose that. I get to choose whether or not I'm going to act from love. I get to choose those things. Those are things that I control no matter the circumstance and no matter the situation. And so because I can choose that, that means I can control that. And if I can control that, that means that I can begin to influence and control, or through influence, the things around me based on my ripple effect. We talked about ripple effect a few weeks ago. Based on my ripple effect. And this is how you begin to expand your circle of influence. That allows you to control more things. But let me share this first. Almost anyone who exerts a certain level of influence and control first exerted that influence and control on themselves. They mastered themselves. People don't become kings. People don't become president and mayors without a certain ability to create influence and control over the things that they control about themselves, including President Trump. I said it a long time ago, there's so many things we can learn from that man. Yeah, he may be a narcissist. Yeah, he may have his issues. But let me tell you something. In order for him to get where he is, there's a certain level of discipline and self-control that you have to have. Maybe not in all the areas, right? He might not have them all tied down. We're all stuck in different areas. But there's a certain level of control that he's had on himself that allowed him to get where he is. The other thing, all right, again, reason number one, why we stay stuck in life is I don't have control, the belief that I don't have control. Here's something else that you can control. We talked about this last week. So if you didn't hear it last week, I'm not going to talk about it at length, but you need to go and check out last week's show. You can control your inputs. You can control your inputs. Some of us, it's time that we really start paying attention to what we watch. See, because here's the thing. I've heard people say, Linal, I can't control what I eat, man. I smell it and I just, or I see it and I just, Well, you can control what you smell. You can control what you see. To a large part, you can. Maybe it's time to start turning off the television. You trying to be on a diet. I'm going to tell you, watching regular programming is not going to help. Because they're going to be showing you, slices of pizza with the cheese stretched between the pizza and the slice they're trying to get. They're going to be showing you hamburgers with the cheese crumpling over the side, melting down, dripping. They're going to show you these things and they're going to put these inputs in your mind. That's why you feel like you don't have control. You don't have control of the input. And that's one of the things that you can turn off. So I don't have control. Consider that. That's just an excuse. And it's a lie. You do have control. You do have control. You have control of yourself. You have control of your attitude. You have control of your thoughts. Just because they come don't mean you got to think on them. But again, this all takes practice. Why do you think people meditate? Meditation is nothing more than strengthening the mind. Then closing your eyes and saying, I'm going to be in a meditative state for 20 minutes. For 20 minutes, all I'm going to do is think about my breathing. If I can think about this, right? If I can sit for 20 minutes and actively tell myself, Linal, keep your mind present to your breathing. Keep your mind present to the thoughts about breathing. And keep this mantra going through your mind. If I can control that in my mind, then when some crazy thought hits my head, don't you think that the muscle in my mind that I've developed over time now can say, get out of here? And it goes, it actually leaves. It actually leaves because I've trained my mind how to think. Because I've taken 5 minutes and thought about my breathing and then extended it to 10 minutes and thought about my breathing and then extended it to 15 minutes, that now when crazy thoughts hit my mind, or by the way, I'm looking to focus on something and I keep getting hit with other thoughts, that I've had the practice I need to actually clear my mind and say, nope, that's not what we're working on right now. What we're working on is what we said we're going to work on, and that's what we're going to do. Let me tell you something. One of the reasons people don't feel like they have control is because they haven't mastered the mind. That's a whole nother segment. Here's the last piece. And this is one of the things that, in my opinion, has made coaching so powerful for me and makes coaching powerful for other people. Again, one of the reasons many people feel like they're stuck is because they believe they don't have control. And one of the reasons you feel like you don't have control is because you haven't mastered your mind. You haven't managed your inputs, your media inputs and inputs around you. But one of the reasons you haven't done those things is because you haven't tapped into your spiritual substance. You haven't tapped into your spiritual power. And because you haven't tapped into your spiritual power, into your spiritual substance, then you don't have the fortitude to control yourself. You don't have the fortitude. And one of the reasons you haven't tapped into your spiritual substance and your essence and your personal power and all those things that you've heard about is because you don't even know what they are. And the reason you don't know what they are is because you haven't slowed down long enough to get quiet and to be fully present to you. And that's one of the first things. Well, it's not the first thing. First thing I do is I distinguish the context, right? When I'm working with clients, I want to get underneath what is your cognitive distortion? What's going on? What's happening for you up here? How are you seeing the world? Because then once I can understand how you're seeing the world, then I can begin helping you see how you see the world. And when you begin seeing how you see the world, it just drives a whole different level of awareness that I'm getting to something else here. I'm going to stop. Okay, that's number 2. But y'all get my point. And this is the power of coaching. People say, man, coaching is expensive. Man, it's one of the investments that I'm so happy I made and I continue to make. I'm in 3 coaching conversations a week. 1 on Monday, 1 on Thursday, 1 on Friday. Why? Because of what it's done to get me unstuck in my life. And I meant to start with this. But I was stuck, and even some people are stuck and don't even realize it. Right now, they're looking through the news feed on Facebook, or maybe they've heard me on the radio already talk about, hey, the top 3 reasons you're stuck in life. And they're like, I'm not stuck. And they turned it off. Boop. And let me tell you something. If you have a vision for your life, if you have goals and you haven't been able to achieve them, consider that you're stuck. Consider that you're stuck. And the reason I say that is because when I got introduced to coaching, I was living a good life. I was making well over 6 figures a year. I was traveling the world. It wasn't like anything was necessarily broken or that I realized. When I started working with a coach, I started to realize, man, I'm stuck in a relationship. I can't even navigate a healthy relationship with a woman. I'm stuck in terms of how I relate to myself. I can barely be consistent in my life in areas I really want to be consistent with me. I can't consistently eat what I want to eat. I can't consistently not drink what I don't want to drink. I can't consistently, lose that little bubble around my stomach. I can't do it. I was stuck. When it came to money, I was stuck. I was making good money. Money's going right back out the door. Bank account stayed the same. And I was saving money, but it just really never ever moved past what I wanted it to move. Why? Because I was stuck. And part of what helped me get unstuck was, 1, learning more about myself, becoming aware of the context that I saw life through, the lens I saw life through. But the other one was realizing that I could tap into the spiritual fortitude, the spiritual substance, and actually move my life forward in powerful ways when I was able to relate to my God-given power. Many of us don't know that, though. That's why we're stuck. One of the biggest reasons to work with a qualified, certified ontological coach. Top 3 reasons we stay stuck in life in some area. Again, remember, we're not all stuck in the same areas, right? But many of us are stuck in some area. The first one is I don't have control in that area. Let me give you a good example for me. So the reason why I didn't navigate relationships well for so long is because, 1, I didn't know I was stuck. I thought everything was fine. And that's very, very important because sometimes we're stuck and we think things are fine. So let me help you define what stuck means. Stuck is whenever you have an intention or desire for something and you don't know how to get it. That is being stuck. Okay? So, back to the example I was about to provide. Here I am, grown man, mid-30s, not really sure how to be in a relationship. I wanted to be married. I wanted to have a family. I didn't know how. Why? Because I was stuck. I was stuck in a certain way of thinking about relationships, all right? And it wasn't until I realized that I did have control in relationship, because one of the reasons I was stuck is because I believe I did not have control. If I got married, I would have no control over that relationship. That woman can do whatever she wanted to do. And that means she could take half of everything I had gained financially. That means that she could influence my life negatively. That means that she could do all types of things that would break me down. And so, and by the way, those are all negative things. Notice I was focused on all the negative. And so I didn't know how to do relationship because I didn't want to be committed. I didn't know how to commit. And one of the things that I became aware of in coaching is that I'm a major influence in my marriage. How about that? That I can influence my marriage through my commitment, through what I desire for the marriage to have, and taking actions based on that desire. And then it clicked for me that, wait a second, if I have control, that means I can create a happy marriage. I can create a relationship. And when that clicked for me, the possibility of relationship opened up, I wasn't stuck anymore. It wasn't that simple. I mean, there were practices, there were things I had to do with integrity, hard things. I was just sharing with a client this week. One of the things I had to do is I had to date with integrity for the first time in my life. So I was going out with women with the intention of, hey, do they meet my conditions of satisfaction for somebody I wanted to be with? And then I had to stay in integrity with that. So no matter how the date went, like maybe I realized I really don't like you. And then later, at 11 o'clock at night, I drop them off and they say, hey, you want to come up for coffee? I had to stay in an alignment with my intention. No, I don't want to come up for coffee because I know we're not drinking coffee at 11 o'clock at night. And I also know that you don't fit the conditions of satisfaction I have for the woman I want to be with. And if I want to create that relationship, I have to stay on path. We talked about self-discipline, I think, in last week's show. Man, one of the reasons many of us stay stuck, lack of self-discipline. I didn't put that on the list because you don't have to tune in to hear that. You don't have to tune in to realize that. Number 2, the desire for perfection. One of the main reasons people stay stuck is because they want to do it perfectly. If I'm going to be an entrepreneur, if I'm going to leave corporate America and start my own business, it must be done with perfection. It's got to be done the right way, right? It's got to be done perfectly. Man, if there's no other setup, that is one of the biggest setups. Perfection is one of the biggest setups. And right now, a lot of people are probably shaking their heads. They're probably saying, that's elementary, my dear Watson. Ah, yeah, but you're trying to be perfect somewhere, though. Just think about it. Let me tell you something. In my journey, my growth, trying to live, doing my best to live a life aligned with my purpose on the planet, one of my major impediments, and I know anybody that is high performing, self-disciplined, I don't care who you are, perfection is one of your major impediments. It's one of your major impediments. All you got to do is just think about it. Just practice a little self-awareness with me right now. But one of my major impediments in my evolution as a man was the need for perfection. In fact, let me tell you something. I struggled for a long time creating the life that I wanted to live because perfection kept getting in the way. The need to be perfect, wanting to do it perfectly, trying to do it perfectly. Man, there are so many people who are 50% of the way on a project, 75% of the way on something, 80% of the way on a concept. They are almost there, but they will not launch. They will not tell us about it. They will not put themselves out there because they are waiting for it to be perfect. And guess what? Wake up. It's not gonna be perfect. So you will never launch. You will never begin if perfection is something that you are ailed with. Perfectionism is your disease. You're gonna stay stuck. How do I know? Because, man, that was me. I'm gonna launch this website next week and I wouldn't launch it because it wasn't perfect. Oh man, I see this over. Let me develop this. Let me develop that. And let me tell you something. Once I got clear on the difference between perfection and excellence and committed to choosing progress over perfection, I became an action-taking machine. Like, now it's like, oh, let's launch. Oh, let's go. Oh, launch the website. Launch the product. Right. Why? Because I know if I put my best into this, if I put my absolute best into this thing, and I know I'm delivering with excellence, I don't expect perfection anymore. I know something's going to be wrong. I know somebody's going to say, hey, this didn't go well. Oh, I didn't like this. And if you're trying to avoid criticism in your work, if you're trying to avoid criticism in whatever it is that you're doing because you want it to be perfect, and that's the reason why you haven't launched yet, that is one of the biggest lies you will ever tell yourself, because you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to do it perfectly because you're a human being and human beings are imperfect. Sorry. Newsflash. Newsflash. It's not going to be perfect, folks. That business you want to launch, that store you want to open, it's not going to be perfect. There are going to be problems. So guess what? Do your best and get it out. If you set a date, launch it on that date. Launch it with all the problems. Launch it. Because if you don't, all you're doing is perpetuating perfection and you're going to stay stuck. You're going to stay stuck. Let me tell you something. For me, providing excellence, and this is the big piece, right? Excellence versus perfection. For me, providing excellence is about taking focused action and bringing my brilliance and the best of all that I do, all of my talents, to whatever it is that I said I was going to do. And that's all I can, that's all I can bring. That's what I bring. And I bring it with as much power as I can. And guess what? Somebody's not going to like it. Somebody's going to have a problem with it. And that's okay. Because imperfection is a consequence of all human action. Let me say it again. Imperfection is a consequence of all human action. And perfection is not achievable. It's not achievable. If you're trying to make something perfect, you are lying to yourself. You will never launch. You will never get unstuck. You're gonna have to grapple with your humanity and understand that you will never launch the perfect product. You will never launch the perfect site. You will never start the perfect business. It's not gonna happen because you are afflicted with the same thing that the rest of us are afflicted with, and that is humanity. And humanity itself means that you are imperfect. Imperfectly perfect. And choosing perfection as something that you're looking to achieve makes no sense at all. And this is the major reason. So many people stay stuck. And let me tell you something. This is why I've created the mantra, today I choose progress. Because When I created the Today I Choose Progress mantra that many of you heard at the recent Murder Mediocrity Summit, man, the reason why I created that was because it was for me. It was like, today I choose progress. The commitment is progress. The commitment is progress, not perfection. Today I choose progress. And I have to tell myself that every time I launch something, Linal, it's about progress. It's not perfection, bro. Because if I try to stay perfect, I will stay stuck. Some people's revenue is stuck because they've been trying to be perfect. And it's just not going to be perfect. It's just not going to be perfect. What matters is not that it's perfect. What matters is that the revenue is growing. So, number 2, on the reasons why many of us are stuck in life is because our desire for perfection has us stuck. It has us just, man, it's like perfection. I mean, the best analogy I can give you with perfection is like standing in concrete, pouring concrete on your feet and then trying to move. You can't do it. You can't move. A perfectionist will always have false starts and stall on action. And let me tell you something. If you notice that action is something that you just don't take, it's probably because you're a perfectionist. And guess what? You're going to have to get over yourself. It's not going to be perfect. It's just not going to be perfect. That I can say with 100% confidence. It won't be perfect. Number 3, the third reason why people stay stuck. Stick with me here. The third reason why people stay stuck is an underlying belief that self-development does not work. Now, listen to what I said, underlying. An underlying belief that self-development does not work. Let me tell you, almost everybody that I've ever met that says self-development doesn't work is not a person who I want to emulate. And not a person I want to be like. I don't want their bank account. I don't want their house. I don't want their car. I don't want nothing to do with them. I don't. They like, oh, that don't work. Of course you don't believe it works because you haven't tried to work it. And then there's some of us who go halfway with self-development. We're in and we out. We dip our toe in, I'm gonna dip my toe in and see how the water feel. If I don't like the water, I'm gonna get out. Like that. When it comes to self-development, dipping your toe don't work. You're going to have to drench yourself in it. Why? Because you're not going to like it. You're not going to like self-development. It's not going to be an automatic desire that you have. Why? Self-development is about self-understanding. So here's the first misconception about self-development, okay? Self-development is about self-understanding, self-knowledge, not learning a new competence. Let me say that one more time, okay? Self-development is about self-understanding, okay? Self-understanding. It's about self-knowledge, not learning a new competence. Learning how to manage your finances is not self-development. It is learning how to manage your finances. And this is a big misconception. People are like, oh, I do lots of self-development and it doesn't work because they're going out and they're learning new competencies and they haven't started working on themselves. So all they're doing is just pouring water into a bucket with a bunch of holes. And then they got all this competence, all this knowledge, and they don't even know how to do it. And they don't even understand why they don't know how to do it because they haven't done the work on themselves. They don't know themselves. They have no self-awareness, no self-knowledge. And so they can't even realize that this financial management course I took, the reason why it's not working is because I don't understand myself and the relationship I have to money. And until I understand me and my relationship to money, I will never, ever be able to transform my finances. No matter how much about money I know, ask a broke accountant. Ask them. They understand money. They know how money works, but they don't know themselves. That's why they're broke. And they can take your money and manage it and do a good job with it, and then go into a home that they're operating broke because they believe self-development doesn't work. And they forgot, they missed somewhere along the journey that really self-development is all about self-understanding. Self-development is all about self-knowledge. Self-development is not what you do in college. Ooh, that rhymed. Somebody write that down. Drop that into a piece of poetry. But I mean, it's true. They don't develop us in school. That's why we're in the situation we're in. We go from kindergarten to 12th grade, very little self-development. Very little self-development. It's all competence and knowledge. Then you go to college and you're learning all these applied theories, right? That's not self-development. They're just filling your brain with a bunch of knowledge. And the thing is, most people graduate college, get good jobs, and still broke because they haven't developed themselves. Self-development doesn't work is number 3. And the reason it doesn't work is because many of us are not self-aware. Let me ask you a question. Get yourself a piece of paper. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not so much, 10 being phenomenal, how self-aware are you? Like how self-aware are you? And this is how you know. You know because when you're stressed, do you think about what I could have done better? Or are you focused on attacking other people? Are you focused on blaming and complaining? Like if you're a complainer, consider that you're not self-aware. If your language is always complaining about your circumstance and complaining about how you feel, and I'm so exhausted and I'm so tired, and the reason I'm tired is because of this, and I'm so exhausted because of that. And you're always complaining about something, right? At the job, they did this and they did that. My life would be so much better if my boss just didn't show up for work on Monday. And if you're just complaining all the time, consider that you're probably low on the self-awareness scale because you haven't figured out where you fit in the equation. And that's why you're stuck at work. That's why you're stuck in your life. That's why you're stuck in terms of your ability to stay energized and rested. That's why you're exhausted all the time. You don't know yourself. Some of us are stuck when it comes to energy level. Like you can't surpass a certain energy level. Always tired, always exhausted, can't focus, right? That's where you're stuck in life. And until you exercise something different in that area, you'll never get where you want to go. Never. But part of it is because you're just not aware. You're not aware. People don't even realize they get super tired after their lunch. They don't even realize all they know is that they're tired. They're not aware of what they ate because we don't practice self-awareness. So on a scale of 1 to 10, write down, how aware are you? How aware? And here's why this is important. This is important because as human beings, we have this ability to justify what we justified. Let me say it one more time. As human beings, we have this ability to justify what we justified. Let me give you an example. No human being takes an action that can be considered wrong unless they feel justified. Okay? And the reason they feel justified is because they processed it in a way that justifies it. And when we don't have self-awareness, typically we'll justify it around the actions of other people versus just telling ourselves, this is what I want to do right now. From a place of full awareness. This is what I want to do right now. So that's why I'm doing it. And it don't have nothing to do with what my wife said. It don't have nothing to do with what my boss said. I'm just acting out right now because I want to act out. Like most of us can't deal with that about ourselves. We don't like that part of ourselves. And so we're blind to it. That's the reason we don't like self-development, because we don't want a mirror. Somebody put up and say, there you are. There you go. That's you right there. Can you love that person? Can you be with that person? Are you willing to shift and change and transform that person? See, but in order to shift, change, and transform that person, you got to be aware of who the person is right now. So then the question becomes, do you really know yourself? Like, do you really, really, really know yourself? Man, many of us are walking around and we're an enigma to self. We don't even know ourselves. We have no clue who we really are, how we really operate. Like, we don't even know what makes us happy, what we're passionate about. We don't even know what we want for Christmas. Man, it's crazy how we get older and we lose complete contact with ourselves. We don't know what we want. We have no idea how we operate, what excites us, what brings us joy. And so if I don't know me, how can I expect somebody else to do that? Man. Now, again, do you really know yourself? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to write on this paper, how well do you know yourself? Number 1, not well at all. Or 10, I know myself intimately. I have a phenomenal relationship with self. And by the way, anybody, let me be clear. Anybody that has a phenomenal relationship with self, boy, let me tell you, you can see your dirt. You can see the nasty sides of yourself. Like, are you willing to actually get in a relationship with your shadow? Here's what I mean by shadow. Shadow is the dark side. See, because we all have it. We all have it. My buddy, attorney Ernest Fenton, is talking. And, I remember we did a relationship segment here on WVON, and he was like, men are savages. All men are savages. Now, why could that man say that? He says that because he understands himself as a man, and he knows that as a man, he could be a savage. And since he knows that he could be a savage and that's his shadow, right? He has to make sure he doesn't let his shadow do what his shadow wants to do. He has to put a leash on the shadow. Like, I ain't going there. I ain't doing that. I ain't watching that, because I know my shadow will take over. But see, some of us don't even know ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why we fall into temptation, because we let temptation get too close. I'm just saying. How well do you know yourself? See, but here's the thing. In order to know yourself, that means you got to be able to be with all of it. All of it. And most of us, we can't be with ourselves that way. But if you want to get unstuck, you got to start practicing. Do you know your stories? The stories you tell yourself. Right, Linal, what do you mean by stories? See, here's the thing. We tell ourselves stories all the time. We tell ourselves stories. And then the problem is we get so enrolled in the stories and we believe the stories that we start acting out the story. Right? So I'm going to tell you a story I had about time. This one is nice and clean and easy, okay, that I think we can all relate to. This is, in coaching we say, you got to make sure that, with a client, if a client is having a hard time digesting something, that you don't want to steepen the gradient in the coaching. You want to lower it so they can be with it, right? And I think time is something we can all be with. I might have been going some places that some people can't be with. There's some man right now saying, I don't have a shadow side. I'm sanctified. All right, bro, put yourself in a bad situation. You better acknowledge that shadow and stay out of them situations. Okay. Anyway, So time. When I started working with my coach, executive coach, I one of the major conversations I used to have with him was about time, right? I don't have enough time. And I'm sure many of us can relate to this. Yeah, we can relate to this. I don't have enough time. And what he began to distinguish for me was, well, you have a story about time. Like, what do you mean I have a story about time? My story about time is that there's 24 hours in a day. All right. There are 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in that minute. That's my story about time. He was like, no, your story is you don't have enough time. And because your story is you don't have enough time, you create it that way. And I remember, so we coached a lot on time. And almost every time we got off the phone, every time I got off the phone with my coach, I was mad. Like, this dude has no clue. He don't understand. And by the way, it's because my story was so strong. Because at the time I was an executive in corporate America. I was moving a million miles a minute. And things seemed to be coming from everywhere, right? I just didn't have time. And it wasn't until I got underneath that, because this story, I don't have time, was my truth, I was subconsciously creating it that way. And when I shifted my story to I have time to execute on things that are important to me, I have time to deliver on my purpose, all of a sudden, my experience of time slowly became different. Right now, my experience of time is very different. Before, I didn't have time for anything. I remember my coach asked me, he gave me a well-being practice. He said, Linal, one of the things we're doing, we were focusing on your well-being. And I want you to think about the things that the 8-year-old Linal would really enjoy. Write them down. And we're going to start practicing doing these things, right? So I wrote down some things. One of the things I put at the top of the list was basketball. 8-year-old Linal would have loved to play basketball, but the 35-year-old Linal can't do it. Too busy, too much happening. He's too important. Can't play basketball, right? So he said, I want you to go play basketball. I said, man, I don't have time. You know how much, I don't have time to play basketball, right? And it was real for me. It was real. It was real in my mind. Like, I don't have time. I got too much to do, too much work to do, too many responsibilities. And it wasn't until it shifted where really the story became, I do have time and I manage my time well. Now I play basketball 3 times a week for 90 minutes. That's quote unquote, that's a long time. And then I hit the gym and lift weights. But the point is, I'm doing more now in terms of productivity and creativity than I've ever done in my life. And I have time to work out. One of the reasons many of us are in the situations we're in is because of the stories we tell ourselves. And you don't even realize it's a story because you relate to it as true. Like, you relate to it as a fact. And because you don't know your stories, you're operating in this life. You're operating in this system that, by the way, you've created for yourself. You've created it. You're operating in this system and you're struggling in a system, in a life, in a story that you're creating. You're creating it. Nobody else is doing this to you. These are your stories. The story that I didn't have time was my story. And guess what? I lived it out that way. I didn't have time. I have a client right now. One of her practices is to take a bath. Just take a bath. Slow down and take a bath. She said, when am I going to do that? She's an executive. I don't have time. I don't have time to take a bath. Between work, between trying to be a good partner, between trying to be a good parent, I don't have time for a bath. Yeah, because you keep telling yourself that. You keep telling yourself that. I said, think about this. Think about how insane it is that me and you, this is a powerful executive. right? Powerful executive, leader of people. Me and you are having a conversation about you creating the opportunity for yourself to take a bath twice a month, because your story of time is so strong. Because many of us, we're taking showers, we're like, boom, boom, hit the unmentionables real fast, in and out, brush the teeth, not even 2 minutes, get it? And then what's showing up on the other side? Cavities, root canals, all types of things, right? That you have to go take time to do. And it's perpetuating the time story that you don't have time. Because now a root canal takes way more time than brushing your teeth adequately for 2 minutes every day. So we create more of the same. We create less time in our life. Somebody on Facebook was like, what? She don't have time for a bath? Let me tell you something. Hey, there are a lot of people listening right now who don't have time for baths because of their time story. They taking showers all the time. They taking showers. Showers are faster. If I'm going to take a bath, the context of a bath means I have to slow down, sit down and soak, and actually take care of myself and just be. And they don't have time for that. They don't have time for it. I promise you, I can take a poll right now to listeners, and over 50% of them aren't taking baths because they don't have time, because they have a time story. I know it because I was the same way. So that's what I mean when I say, do you know your stories? Do you know what stories you're telling yourself this morning? Because your stories are creating more of the same, and your stories are one of the reasons that you're stuck. So I got a good question here. What are some steps to changing our story? So the first one, so let me read the whole question. What are some steps to changing our stories that show up as the truth? And that's the tough part, because many of us don't know our stories. That's why I keep a job as a coach. Because people don't know their stories. I hear them when they're talking to me. They're talking, and I'm like, that's not true. Who told you that? Like, well, that's what it is. No, it's not. That's not a fact. You can't pour me a bowl of that, right? But to them, that's real. And so then, so often, here's what happens. Here's what happened. In order for us to distinguish our stories, we got to slow down. We have to slow down. This is where reflection comes in. And you have to gain clarity on what your stories are. So the first practice I'll give to you all for distinguishing your story is, first, identify what's not working in your life. Where are you stuck? Like, where are you stuck this morning? Like, what's really got you stuck? And then ask yourself, well, what are the stories I have in place that are keeping me right here? Like, what's the story for why I'm not launching my business? Why I haven't left corporate America? Why I can't save $5,000? Like, what's the story? Because it's a story, right? Well, I can't save $5,000 because I only make $1,000 a week. And my rent is, 75% of that. Okay, so that's the story. And consider it a story. Consider it a story. There are plenty of people who don't make lots of money that put lots of money away. It's a story. So then you have to say, okay, well, if it's a story, how am I perpetuating and upholding the story? Like, what are the things that I'm doing? And start looking at the trend around, okay, well, how do I spend my money? What am I spending my money on? And when have I spent quite a bit of money? And get underneath the fact that the story is really a lie that you just been telling yourself. Because that's what it is. It's just a lie. And by the way, you learned the lie somewhere. Like, somebody else taught you to lie. Like, somebody else taught you that there's not enough time in a day. Right? Your parents probably taught you that. You saw your parents rushing around all the time, and they were always frantic and moving and tired and exhausted. And so here you are, an adult, and you're frantic and tired and exhausted, and you're moving all the time, and you learned the story from your parents. And that's why it feels true, because surely your parents didn't lie to you. Surely they didn't lie. Maybe their parents lied to them, and you just inherited the lie. I don't know, but a story is a story. But you got to slow down to distinguish your stories. The other way, honestly, I'm going to tell you, is hire a good coach. Get coaching. Man, when I tell you coaching has an ROI, it has an ROI. My clients will tell you it has an ROI. One of the biggest returns on investment in coaching is breaking down the stories that you tell yourselves and operating outside those stories. And many of us have a poverty story. We have a story that we just don't have enough. And that story perpetuates itself in everything that we do. And that's why we don't have enough. The biggest part is self-awareness. And the reason why I can't just lean on self-awareness is because so many of us are not aware. We're not aware. And I wish I could just tell you to be self-aware. But this is one of the reasons why it's great to have people outside of us. I would say ask. Here's a really good one. Way to get underneath your story. Ask somebody else, what are my top 3 stories? What are the top 3 stories that I tell myself that you heard me tell myself? See, because other people, they can point at things. And then let me tell you something. If you take on the practice, believe them. Don't argue with them. Don't be like, nah, that's not it. Believe them. Believe them. What are your blind spots? Do you know your blind spots? Like, do you know the areas where, and let me tell you how to distinguish a blind spot. A blind spot is a place in your life where you constantly run up against the same thing. You don't mean to. You don't want to, right? You even ask yourself, how did I end up here again? Consider that's a blind spot in life, right? You know, somebody out there is in a relationship with a guy who's a different guy, but the same guy you've been with time after time after time after time, right? And you're asking yourself right now, how did I get into another relationship like this? Consider you have a blind spot. And when you have a blind spot, you need help, right? You know, blind people, a blind person is astute enough to know somebody says, hey, I got you, to put the arm out and let them help, right? Are you willing to get some help in your blind spots? And again, a blind spot is any area in your life where you keep bumping up against the same stuff. Because consider that has you stuck. If you're stuck in relationship, and the reason you're stuck in relationship is because you keep dating the same type of man, you keep attracting the same type of guy, you're stuck because you have a blind spot. And you need self-development. And you probably think self-development won't work on a relationship, and that's why you're stuck. That's why you're stuck. Here's the last question I want you to ask yourself around self-development. And I'm going to take this phone call. Where are you performing? You might say, Linal, slow down. What do you mean performing? Man, if you're not, we all perform in our lives somewhere. Where are you performing? Man, I'm going to tell you, we perform. Every morning you get up. You do your hair, you put on your face, you're getting ready for a performance. Where are you performing? And I'm saying not necessarily performing with intention, right? Because we have to perform with intention. Even now on the radio, this is performing with intention, right? So we have to perform, no doubt. But where are you performing without intention, unintentionally? You're just performing. One of the places I performed with unintentionally was in corporate America. Like I was operating from a context that I didn't have enough, that I wasn't enough. And so I was overperforming, right? Spending long amount of times on creating PowerPoint presentations with all the bells and whistles and colors because of my own lack of self-worth. And so I was overperforming. I didn't realize it till my coach distinguished it, told me. And then my coach came back. I was sitting in a meeting and I saw a peer in marketing, share a presentation, all black and white, looked like he had typed it up 10 minutes before the meeting. All executives, by the way. And I said, whoa, I'm overperforming when I present. Didn't realize it. But many times we're not aware of where we're performing, and that's the reason we're stuck. By the way, that's one of the reasons I was stuck in a time context, because I was spending too much time in areas that didn't matter. Didn't know it because I didn't know me. I didn't know that I had some self-worth issues, some not enough issues, operating in a corporate context as an executive. Didn't know it. That's why coaching's so powerful. Let me tell you something. This morning, if you see this and you want to take the step for coaching, I'm going to tell you, reach out to me. Go to my website, www.linalharris.com. Send me a contact information. Email me. Reach out to me. If I can't coach you, I'll find a competent coach that can. But coaching changed my life. And a lot of what I'm sharing with you are things that I've learned, like I told you, from working with hundreds of clients over the years. If you've enjoyed what you heard, this is what clients have been getting, but spelled out over a long period of time that really helps them dive and understand who they are. But if you're stuck, are you willing to put your money where your mouth is and get unstuck? Again, the top three reasons that we stay stuck. First, the belief that you don't have control. Second, the desire for perfection. And number three, because your underlying belief that self-development works is not there, right? And what I said in context of self-development that I think is extremely important, that self-development is about self-understanding. Self-development is about self-knowledge, not learning a new competence. And that's the key.
Join Linal Harris every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. here on WVON 1690 AM.